Okay.
Well,
Nice to see you again.
today.
Say again?
Yaakov is back.
Oh,
so-
okay, good.
Yeah. He was just down there for the week.
Okay. So Chaim is here. No, Chaim is on. Chaim Eisenberg.
You can ask him, he'll come.
Oh, Chaim, they need you for Minyan tomorrow if possible. Here's Abe. I was also going to go to the short filler one, but they may have a short Minyan. Okay. No. We're in volume 12,
Yeah.
page, we did women, 35, taking the Torah out from the Oral. You have the right sefer?
I must
Yeah,
have just
35.
put it in instead of in the right place, just put it, stuck it in.
Hi, Abe.
Maybe you read it in advance.
So we talked last week about Chiyuv Kriyas Torah, whether it's on the Yachid, whether it's on the Tzibur, whether women have a shaykhus to it. So the removal of the Torah from the Aron, before the Torah can be read, it must be removed from the Aron, brought to the Bima. The Gemara Kiddushin rules that when the Torah passes, one should stand out of respect. Iboilu, Ma'alamad b'nei Sefer Torah. You have to stand in front of the Sefer Torah. Rav Chilkiyav, Rav Simon, Rav Lozer Amri, Kavachomer. We stand up in front of the people who learn Torah, right? You stand up when a Talmid Chacham walks by. Mi panei lo kol sheken. So, from the Torah itself, where the Talmid Chacham learned from, certainly we should stand for. Shulchan Aruch rules based upon this, that one should stand when one sees a Sefer Torah being carried past until it is brought to its destination, or until one can no longer see it. The Ramah adds, for example, someone walks into shul and opens the Aron and carries it out of the Aron, so you have to stand. But let's say he walks out of the shul. You don't see it anymore, you could sit down again. That's what he was referring to. The Ramah adds that one is also obligated to stand if he hears that the Sefer Torah is being carried. Aroy Sefer Torah k'shul mahalech, chayv lamod l'fanav. If you see a Sefer Torah being carried, you have to stand. V'yu hakol oindim ad sheyamod zeh shemalicha v'yagid l'mkomo. And everyone should stand until the person who's carrying it reaches his destination. Oh, ad she's kasemenei, or until nobody sees it anymore. Ha Yaakov. We're on page 35. Says the Ramah, but a chumash, you don't have to stand. Yesh machmirim. Some machmir that a chumash is also, if it's moved, that you have to stand. Hashemeh kol hanoisa sefer Torah. If you hear the sound, like let's say he's carrying a sefer Torah with bells. Right? The Ramah's ruling concerning hearing the Sefer Torah is derived from a ruling of Rabbeinu Manoach, cited in the Beis Yosef, who writes that for this reason, it is customary to make bells for the Sefer Torah. According to Yikar Adin, one is not obligated to stand after the Torah is brought to the Bima for the duration of the Kriyas Torah. That's why we refer to that it reaches its destination. You don't have to stand anymore. However, the Ramah cites the Maram of Rottenburg, who did stand for Kriyas Torah, because it parallels the receiving of the Torah on Har Sinai, where Am Yisrael stood. Common practice today to sit, though some individuals are stringent and they stand during Kriyas Torah. So now you know that the meaning of people that you see standing during Kriyas Torah is based on this Marami Rottenburg, who says that since Klal Yisrael received the Torah standing, even though it's reached its destination, they're machmir to stand. Says the Beis Yosef, Kosav Rav Manoach, Dehu Adin, Hashemes Koilo Avol Pishen Aroi Ehu, Chayv Lamed, if you just hear it. Valkorcha Nogu Lasos Pamonim, they make bells for Sefer Torah. V'rai Mediv Midrav Tarfon Kadav Shama Kal Kora De Ime, when heard the footstep of his mother, Omar, Akume Kame Shechina. I must rise before the Shechina. See Kiddushin 31a, where this incident is recorded, though in the printed versions, Rav Yosef is the one who would rise. That means hearing the footsteps of the, as long as you hear the Sefer Torah, it's as if, right, you have to honor your mother like you honor the Shechina, and even if you just hear her footsteps, so that's the remez to, hearing a Sefer Torah. The Aruch HaShulchan comments that although some question the permissibility of bells, because on Shabbos, you're going to cause the bells to jingle, and that appears to transgress the prohibition of creating loud noises on Shabbos. But the custom is to permit it. I don't know any of our Sefer Torah that have been made with bells. I've certainly seen, I've certainly seen in museums, especially the Pamonim, they're famous, they're like singular things that are put like on they're like Neiros Chanuk, Neiros Shabbos. You know what I'm talking about? On the Atzei Chaim. But like we put a crown, but you've seen where they put, Lee Sampson has a very famous Pamonim from 500 years ago or something like that, where those things are full of bells. The whole thing is called Pamonim. I saw it at his house. Aruch HaShulchan comments, because of Rabbeinu Aramah, that Shomea Kol HaNoizes Sefer Torah, Afal Pi She'ein Roya, or Yisuchayv Lamo, Ad Kan Lashonei. He quotes the Ramah. Hainu Kishiyesh Pamonim, HaMikashkashim, if you hear bells that are jingling, Umashmin Kol V'Noagim B'Zeheter B'Shabbos, and it's not a problem to do it on Shabbos. Av Sheyesh Mefakbim V'Zeh Mishum Hashmiam Kol, even though you're not allowed to create a noise on Shabbos. We call Makom for a Nagu Heter. There's a heter to do it. Returning to the question of standing for Sefer Torah, it would seem from the sources above that one need only stand when the Sefer Torah is in transit, but not before it is removed while the Oron is open. That means technically when you open up the Oron, since the Oron is in its place, and it's not in transit, you don't have to stand. Is that the accepted halacha? So the Taz writes that it's customary to stand out of respect for the Torah when the Oron is open, but it's not obligatory to do so, since the Oron is considered a separate reshus, a separate domain. Like we said, if the Torah is carried out and it's not in your vision, even though this is in your vision, it's as if it's in a separate place. If it's on a table that's taller than 10 tefachim, v'rochav arba, shegamur reshus b'fnei atzmo, she'ein tzrichim lamod. So most of our bimas would probably meet this criteria. 10 tefachim, 5 tefachim is an amma. Amma is 2 feet. So I think our bimas probably would be higher than 10 tefachim. And therefore, it itself is a reshus l'fnei atzmo. Then v'gam b'zman she'sefer Torah munachas b'aron hakodesh, afal pu shu patuach. It meikar adin, it's considered a different reshus, and you wouldn't have to stand. El sha'olam oisim kein derech kavod lamed kol sha'on kodesh patuach ve'en chiyuv b'davar. It's a minig of kavod, but not a chiyuv. Rav Moshe Feinstein suggests that even the Taz agrees that the common custom to stand is not absolutely binding, and the custom of those who do not stand is entirely justified. We're talking about when the Oron is open. And this has practical applications. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, when the Oron is open many times. B'chol zehu midina, yishasev b'mkom of Oron, ein tzarech lamed b'fanav. Aval noagu lamed, it's a minig. Yisha kol patuch me'ezitam. Kigon k'shepos Oron lamir shir ha'kovet b'Shabbos, you open up for him his mirrors, he uses. Ayin b'taz, shekasuv sha'olam oisim kein derech kovod. Lamed kol sha'oron kodesh pasuach, ve'en chiyuv b'davar. Kavnosu mashma she'en chiyuv midina b'davar. It's meikar adin, not chayuv. Ela miminhaga oimdin. Hainu shechiyuv kidim minhagim toiv misa. It's an chiyuv based on a proper meaning. Ach shemikol mokom shaykh lefarsh b'kavanas atash ein chiyuv b'davar gam nimin haga. Rav Moshe wants to say there's no chiyuv even malamining. Elamala ba'alma, it's a special stringency for a person who stands. The Doros Achronim ha'oisin al dasav is saying. The later generations who stand do it because their parents did. V'lo lischayim mitzad atzman. V'chenim is a chiyuv midin minig. There's no chiyuv even also minig. There are more rights that it is also customary to follow Sefer Torah when it passes by, and to bring young children to kiss the Torah. So this constant, you get in line behind the Sefer Torah. Right? It's mitzvah levoya. You're accompanying the Sefer Torah. And also when they return the Sefer Torah, there's a line of people that follow the chazan that's carrying it. That's a good minig. The Mishnah Berurah adds that if one is outside the shul when the Torah is taken out, it is a mitzvah to enter the shul due to the notion of Berova Madras Melech, that Hashem is glorified by the presence of a greater number of people. If you are outside when they're taking out the Sefer Torah, mitzvah likones. The basic is liros kishmot simach dis Sefer Torah. It's a special milah when they take out and they put in the Sefer Torah mishum berova madras melech. Based upon these sources, one may wonder whether it is permissible to sit close to the dancing with the Sefer Torah on Simchas Torah. Meaning, Simchas Torah is a problem. Sefer Torah are out. They're in transit. People are dancing with it. Do you have to stand the whole time because of that? That's what he's dealing with. The Piskei Tshuva writes that the poskim have endeavored to defend the practice to sit. Vinei, ha'anoagim lahakel hasheves, lofush, be'esa kofis, avsha sifrei Torah b'amida. Kvar richu ha'poskim u'lam yitzchus alaminig. Im ki ha'medartikim nizorim lo lasheves. People are careful, don't sit. Elim kein sefer Torah b'cheikam. So, if you're holding a sefer Torah, then you can sit. Even though there are other sefer Torah walking around, you can sit if you're holding one. On the other hand, the Yalkut Yosef disagrees, maintains that all who are capable must stand through the Yaakov. Before we read the Yalkut Yosef, so this year when I was in Avel, Simchas Torah, I didn't have a Hakafa. Ein Makifin. I was actually in Shiva at the time. So I saw a lot of halachic svarim about that issue. Number one, if you have a stender that's 10 tfachim high, like it's its own rishus, and you sit behind it, it's like a hefsek between you and the area where the Torahs are, and that's okay, right? So if you have so I don't know whether there's areas in our shul, when you sit behind those desks that we have, that could be considered perhaps a hefsek,
But you're sitting on a level higher, so you're really.
No, but from where the feet is, it could be that that is a hefsek there. Some want to say, when I saw the halacha there, some want to say that on Simchas Torah, when the Sifrei Torah are out, that's the tzmokum. It's like being in the Oro, because you've removed them to dance with it. Anyways, so that you can see the poskim are struggling to try to be malamet close to those who sit. But the Yalkut Yosef says, "Kishaoisim hakofas b'simchas Torah, im sifrei haTorah, umamshichim b'shir v'rikudim sha'arucha, chayovim kol hatzibur lamoy, ve'ein lahem lasheves beis hakofas." You should not sit. Av bein hakofa lakofa, even between hakofas. When Chaim is doing the all the various zmiris there, that's bein hakof lakof. Yishor kulam oindim. Ad shechzir sifrei Torah leichol. He says you have to stand until the Torahs are brought back into it's for the Svardim. The cholim was kenim, while solim v'choshev glem mishram l'sheves bein hakaf l'hakaf. But v'yamdu rak beis hakaf v'satzmam. Right? You could leave you could leave. They don't want you to leave though during the hakafas. But so if you were not present in the room, that would be but he says the zakanim and the cholim can sit bein hakafa l'hakafa. Bein hakafa. During the hakafa itself, they would have to stand. You see what he says in the bottom? It's what I said. The argument that dancing with the Torah in a circle during the hakafas is defined as the Torah being stationary, and that one is obligated to stand only for the first hakafa, since that is the only one that is truly obligatory. Because at that point it becomes its makom. Like I said, once. So the first hakafa, now you've moved it from its place, but then after that it would be considered not so. That's not everybody holds like that.
I have a question.
Yes.
When we were talking about the Aron Kodesh, the minhag in our shul has been important to open the solid doors of the Aron Kodesh and to expose the parochas, but the parochas left closed until by even so. Where does that minhag come from? I see no mention of it here. What is there any basis to that? No.
I mean, a wall and a parochas, there's no difference between it. It's just. Bernie asked in Yavna they have like a wooden doors and a parochas behind it, but that's just that's there. It's not for example, at Young Israel Park they have a metal gate, and they open that up, and there's also a parochas
Earlier in the davening.
But I'm sure they open, but they don't open.
It's open during the entire Shabbos davening.
That gate.
Or the doors and.
Those doors.
Yeah.
I don't see a difference between opening the doors and opening the parochas. I really don't. I think it's because the parochas is beautifully decorated, and they want to show the shul that it's nicely decorated. I don't think it's a mikra din. Okay. 39. Hagbah. Another important element of Kriyas Torah that does not involve the Kriya itself is Hagbah. The Shulchan Aruch discusses Hagbah, lifting the Torah in Siman 134, which is the beginning of Hilchos Kriyas Torah, because, as the Mishnah Berurah explains, Sephardic custom dictates to perform it before the Kriyas Torah. You've been to Sephardic minions; they do the Hagbah before they lay. From a Chaber Kos of Din Zeh. They lift it, they show everybody the cloth before they read. In contrast, the Ramor writes that the Ashkenazic practice is to perform Hagbah following the Kriyas Torah. The Piskei Tshuva explains that the Ashkenazim deviated from the ancient custom to perform Hagbah before the Torah reading to prevent people from believing that seeing the Sefer Torah is more important than reading from it. The Germanic lands changed the custom that was prevalent in earlier days to move the Hagbah to after the Kriya. The populace in general, they came to shul to see the Sefer Torah. It was enough for them. They probably didn't understand the Hebrew, or maybe they did, but they thought that seeing the Sefer Torah was even better than the Kriya. They would actually walk out. There's a passage that says those that leave Hashem will be destroyed. Rachmana litzlan. So now we understand our minig, because the real issue of Kriyas Torah is to read it. It's limud Torah for the tzibur, like we learned last week, and therefore we leave the Hagbah for afterwards. Either way, Hagbah is great importance, so much. You should read this before they sell the kibudim. You should read this portion. Hagbah is great importance, so much so that the Gemara Megillah states that the person who performs Hagbah, referred there as the Golel, receives reward equivalent to all those who read from the Torah. all the aliyahs.
The records who want to take the Galila, there are many records, right?
Yeah, but Hagbah is included. Hagoylel, it means the Hagbah and the Galila. Noitel schar kulan. Darish ben Levi, Asar shakar b'Torah, even if there were 10 people called up to have an aliyah, Hagoyel will say for Torah kibel schar kulan. The one who does the Hagbah and rolls it up gets everybody's schar. Schar kulam salkadaitach ela ema kibel schar kineged kulam. He doesn't take away their schar. He gets schar equal to theirs, to all 10. Now, what is the procedure of Hagbah? Maseches Soifrim. Maseches Soifrim is not a Maseches of Talmud Bavli or Talmud Yerushalmi. It's a later Gaonic work where a lot of dinim of Kriyas HaTorah are found. Maseches Soifrim explains that one opens the Torah so that 3 columns are visible, and one then raises it up for all to see. Miyad goyel sefer Torah shlosha dafim, umagbiu mareyu pnei ksivaso la'ama oimdim liyamino l'smolo. He shows it to his right, he shows it to his left, the writing. Umachzir l'fonov ula'achrav. He sort of turns around, right? He shows it in the front, he shows it in the back. Shemitzu l'chol hanoshim v'noshim liras hakosav l'chrov v'loymar. Basically, he should show it in the four directions: front, back, right, and left. And everyone should bow. How do you like that? That's right. You should bow a little bit and say, most of the people nowadays have this minig, so that they not bow, they point with the finger. But you see, it says you should bow.
Where does the finger come in?
Let's see if it comes up. Let's see if it comes up.
Is there any basis from the time of Hakel when the Melech would read the Sefer Torah every year? Was there a ceremony?
That was once every 7 years.
Was there a ceremony like that too?
You mean Hagbah?
Yeah, or walking around the cover showing to the Sefer Torah.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure that the king got the one aliyah and he read the whole thing. Bernie was talking about Hakel. He was wondering whether the mitzvah of Hakel, is a basis for some of these. No, but we have Ezra in Sefer Ezra. He talks about Kriyas HaTorah and a lot of this is brought down. We're going to Mir Hashem learn Sefer Ezra. The Ramban brings support for this practice from a midrash that interprets the pasuk of cursed is the one who does not uphold the words of this Torah as referring to one who does not perform Hagbah properly. V'amar derech Haggadah, Ramban says, Zeh Chazan she'ena mekim Sefer Torah lamidan ketikunan shelo yiplu. It refers to a chazan who doesn't lift up the Sefer Torah so that they should stand carefully, they don't fall. Remember, the Ramban was a Sfardi, so he's talking about a Sefer Torah that stood, right? Those round Sefer Torah that just stand. So he's saying that this is a chazan who really refers to the shamus, right? The gabbai, who stands up Sefer Torah so they don't fall. Linear al chazan. The Ramban says that was one version in the Yerushalmi. But the linear al chazan should make him Sefer Torah latzibur la'aros makes l'kol. He says there's nothing to do with keeping the Torah that are placed on the shulchan to be so that they don't fall, but rather it refers to the guy doing Hagbah. He doesn't show the writing to the people. That one that we just quoted. It's a mitzvah for the men and women to actually see the writing. Here also he says, V'lichroa, which means to bow down. The loymar v'zosator shesam Moshe v'chei noagim. Now, these are the sources. We brought from Masechta Megillah, we brought from Masechta Sofer, we brought from the Ramban. The Shulchan Aruch, when he codified the law, says Marep Neksiva Sefer Torah La'ama Oindim Liminol L'Smolo, Machzir L'Fon of La'achrab. So he points it in the four directions. Shemitzvah Kol Anoshim Anoshim Lirus Aksav V'Lichroa. He does mention bowing. The Loimer V'Zosa Torah Torah Hashem Tmim. The Mishnah writes, based upon Masechta Sofrim, that when performing Agbah, one must be careful to open it 3 columns. When using a standard Torah, a Sephardic Torah cannot really be opened that much. The Mishnah Berurah then cites the Magen Avram. Magen Avram was Rav Avram Gambiner, who was the major commenter on Orach Chaim and Shulchan Aruch, who suggests that perhaps ideally one must open it at least 3 columns. The one who is weaker may open it less than 3 columns. Says the Mishnah, above the bima, he unrolls it 3 columns, umagbia, lifts it, after the dafka nokat gimel, exactly 3 and no less, he's bringing from the Magen Avram. And near Ali, the Torah, if you call magbia, she abichoto, magbia, because she neglal harbe. It depends on the strength.
No, I wonder if they didn't.
Yes, Yaakov?
I wonder if they didn't have smaller Sifrei Torah than we do. Because some of the Torahs we have, I mean, it's, they're massive. It's almost impossible to do that. So I wonder if they didn't have smaller Sifrei Torah in those days.
Maybe they did. And then they say that the Sephardim, when you couldn't open up that much either.
Yeah.
So, oh my God, when we were in Portugal.
I remember that one, sure.
You remember that? Do you remember that? How big that was?
Yeah.
It was impossible. Plus, it would have broke. It would have. It
400 years old.
was a very old Sefer Torah that we found in a community in Portugal.
One of the original ones they brought over, it's so heavy you can barely lift it.
Most people today, they write Sifrei Torah, it's much smaller. I mean, I'm reflecting on the Sifrei Torah that people have donated that have written in the last 10 years. They tend to be much smaller than the
Absolutely.
old.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We see the same thing at Yavna and at Hancock Park. The Sefer Torahs that have been recently donated have been much smaller.
Yeah.
The Mishnah also notes that the Kabbalists believe it's proper to see the letters. That means if you're standing in the audience, you might be too far away. The concept is to actually see the writing. We talked about this or gadol on Shabbos, the or agonus. So he's talking about that through this means, because we said the or agonus is actually in the Sefer Torah. So a person could be Moshe, could draw this light down onto him if he actually sees the osis. I'm wondering whether the minig to point with a finger is based on that. Like you're seeing a letter, right? Or you're seeing a word, because you point to, that's why people point. The preference of seeing the letters in the Torah during Hagbah might indicate that it is preferable to make sure that one opens the columns of the Torah that contain the day's Kriyas HaTorah. This is generally accepted as l'chatchila practice, but the strict halacha does not require it. That means, let's say you're at the end of a parsha. You shouldn't roll the other way so that you'd be in next week's parsha. There seems to be a hakpada that when the magbia should be make sure that at least he's lifting the 3 dafim that are in that week's Kriyas HaTorah.
I noticed you did that today when you had an aliyah. You opened it so there were
No,
3 dafim
because I wanted-
from beginning to end of the aliyah.
Yes, because some people have the Chabad
Yeah.
skers kiss the beginning and the end,
Yes,
but you should see
yes.
at least the whole
That's
thing.
what you're making about.
But you see here, they want to say that people roll a Sefer Torah to get to that crease, to the seam,
Right.
because they don't want it to tear.
Mhm.
So you could roll it too far away from where you are. Here is a halacha that is quite practical. You have to make sure that the one who does Hagbah shows the dafim of the parsha that we had just laid. We saw above in source 40 that according to Shulchan Aruch, everyone should bow and recite. I knew they were going to make a comment because we don't see that minhag of people bowing, right? Should bow and recite V'zos Torah, and this is the Torah, when the Sefer Torah is read. This is indeed the Sephardic custom. Many Ashkenazim do not have the custom to bow. The Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, the Hart Tzvi, was a great posek who lived in Eretz Yisrael about the time of the 1948, about the Independence War, and wrote a lot of tshuvas about utilities in Israel, power plants on Shabbos, a lot of the tshuvas that were written when the state was first created were written by Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, the Hart Tzvi. He has also a sefer called Mikrei Kodesh, which has wonderful things on Yontif, La'alach as well. So Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank questions this and tries to find some basis for the Ashkenazic custom, meaning not to bow. However, he concludes that one should follow the ruling of the Shulchan Aruch. So Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank says that you should bow. Some have a different custom to raise their pinky finger towards the Torah when it's lifted. This custom is mentioned in Sefer HaChaim, for Rav Chaim Palaji. Okay, so there's something that we base our custom on. Let's read the Hart Tzvi. To bow. He sees many people that they don't bow. He didn't know what they relied upon. On Kiddushin Pei Aleph, Shekosav, the Chayav and Lamed b'nei Sefer Torah in Ibnei Lomdel Oimdim of the Kol Shekein. Right? We brought this tonight. The whole minig to stand for Sefer Torah is a kal v'chomer. If you stand for people who learn from the Sefer Torah, you should certainly stand from the Sefer Torah itself. V'nira b'einai shelo onu ela la'amoy b'nei Torah v'lo lishtach v'slo v'lo nimtza b'chol Torah shemishtach v'afilu l'Aron HaKodesh. Meaning, he's finding for the Shiltei Giborim a reason why Ashkenazic custom is not to bow, because the whole concept is to stand upright in front of the Sefer Torah. And he says we don't have minhagim where we bow to the Aron HaKodesh. V'nira shein lezuz mi psak HaShulchan Aruch. In the Brich Shmei prayer, which is from the Holy Zohar, I have to see there, we have to go through there, if it says something about bowing. Two other explanations are given for the custom not to bow by the Divrei Yotziv. The first is that the obligation to bow applies only when the Sefer Torah is raised with the words facing away from the one performing the Akbah, which is the Sephardic practice and was the original practice, but not when the words face the one performing the Akbah. So, for example, on Simchas Torah, when we flip it, right, and we turn it, that would be a time where, according to people who would only bow when seeing letters in that format, they would bow, but not the other way. The second is, since today we are not expert in when the letter Vav is added and when it is not, one should not bow to our current Sifrei Torah.
That's weird.
Huh?
That's weird because we do everything else to honor the Sefer Torah, and it doesn't bother us that we might be wrong on the vavs. So why shouldn't you bow? What is so significant about that one compared to everything else?
And why should there be a nafkamina between whether the letters are pointing to the Magbiya and whether the letters are pointed away from the Magbiya? Do you understand that? I don't understand either of the terutzim of the Divrei Yotziv.
Well,
I don't-
maybe when it's facing you, it's not their cheretz to bow. I don't know. It's still, we're forcing it here.
As if maybe because we're bowing to the person. I don't know. Those are strange. I like the Har Tzvi. The Har Tzvi said we should do like the Shulchan Aruch says and bow. Okay. 43. Removing a Sefer Torah from a Beit HaKnesset. Another important halachic issue that is raised within the context of Kriyas Torah is the permissibility of using a Sefer Torah outside its regular location. In certain cases, it's necessary to remove a Sefer Torah from its place in the shul and bring it elsewhere, such as to a Beis Ovel, or to a hotel, or up to Camp Moshava for a Shabbaton. Is it permitted to move the Torah and leave it temporarily in a different place? The Talmud Yerushalmi states that it is unbecoming to bring a Sefer Torah to anyone other than distinguished individuals. B'chol atar ad omer holchin achar Torah. V'hocha ad omer moidlichin es Torah etzlon. We're talking about on Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol read from a Sefer Torah, and they brought the Sefer Torah to the Kohen Gadol. And so they questioned that. But since these are important people, it's the Torah gets covered by the fact that they're brought to the Melech and the Kohen Gadol. Based on this, the Mordechai, right, a Rishon, cites an opinion that one should not bring a Sefer Torah to people who are in prison, even during the Yomim Noraim. Matzati b'tshuva achas b'nei adam achavushim b'veis asurim ein mevin etzlam Sefer Torah filu b'arshav Yom Kippurim k'taminim b'Yushalmi. Shulchan Aruch also rules that we do not bring the Sefer Torah to individuals confined to prison. However, the Ramah limits this halacha and permits it under certain conditions. B'nei adam achavushim b'veis asurim ein mevin etzlam Sefer Torah afilu b'Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. Says the Ramah, "Ainu davka b'shas akriya levad, aval im mechinim lo Sefer Torah yom or yomayim koidem." It means if they bring it for just right then, you need to read today, Monday. Aval im mechinim lo Sefer Torah yom or yomayim koidem muter. V'moadam choshev b'chol inyan shori. If he's a prominent individual who happens to be in jail.
Well, remember, they put people in jail for a lot of reasons, and like the Rami Rottenberg.
Rami Rottenberg was there for 12, died in jail.
So
And the guy who bailed out his body
Right.
is buried next to him
next to me.
in Worms.
So being in jail then was no raya for anything. Yeah.
That's actually true. The Mishnah Brura adds some additional information regarding this halach. Hachavushin b'veis asurin. I would assume that today, I don't know. I mean, in those places that have a lot of inmates there,
In the camps.
not the camp. I'm talking about prison places.
They have Sefer Torah. I do a lot
They
of
have
work
like
for
a
Aleph.
chapel. They have a chapel.
Yeah, I do a lot of work for Aleph. They go into jails. They have a Sefer Torah, especially in the federal prisons that tend to have white collar crime. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Achavushin b'veis asurim hu adin l'choyle. The same is true for someone who's sick. Yesh cholkin b'chol zakiven danusimein. Some say, listen, these are circumstances beyond their control. And so there are people who argue. They should be able to bring the Sefer Torah to them. Well, Parsha Zohar should deraisa v'vada yesh lahakel. Parsha Zohar, which is a kriya deraisa, that you can bring it to them. The Afshar du adin gabel Parsha Spara, that some hold that has the deraisa dekadin as well. Then ein mevi'in k'dei likros ba basara. V'atam shezilzul Sefer Torah lolich la'nashim tzrichim la kikvod sheyelchu nashim eleh. There are 10 people who are somewhere else. They're not going to shul, and they want a Sefer Torah to be brought to them. You shouldn't do it. they should go to shul. And Afilu B'Rashav Yom Kippur, Mamash Olchem Beis HaKnesses, Minyan Anoshim Le'ezer Bayis. There's, breakaway minyanim he's talking about. This is even the time of the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim passed away in 1933. He's talking about people who leave the shul, 10 people, to a certain house, and they schlep the noisen Sefer Torah mehem, they leak Rosham. Vaday Eina Nochon. So the shul rabbis today would have the Mishnah Brura on their side. They should go to the shul. The Yeshem et Sadim Aleim Schus. Someone to be Malamet Schus, Mishum Shekol Echad Roitze Ba'atz Malalos B'Tor B'Yomim Me'ev. People want to get an Aliyah. It's too expensive in the shuls. So they'll make their own minyan. He says, "Aval ein ze maspik lezalzel b'sefer Torah mishum zeh l'taltalam b'beis haknesses." It's not a good enough reason to schlep the Sefer Torah away from the place in the shul. Ulefrat b'yomim hanoivim sheminig limkor mitzvahs. The mitzvah yomim neroim, even the Chafetz Chaim's time, they sold the aliyahs. Al pi roiv forming b'zeh have said, la knosa shel tzedakah. And by not coming to the shul to participate in the auctions, they're causing the tzedakah to lose money. Let's say that in that breakaway minyan in that person's home, they sell aliyahs. He wants to say that fine, you don't have to be machmir to prevent it. At least if they give tzedakah. He says it's better to establish a place for that Sefer Torah in advance, create an aron. That way, there's less zilzul.
Well, Ernie,
Yes.
we're talking about removing a Sefer Torah from a shul. So
Yes.
to the extent in your example where it ends up in someone's breakaway minyan, it was more than likely in your example with the permission of the shul. It's not where they got their own Sefer Torah. You're saying that they're removing Sefer Torah. So if it came from the shul, it must have had the permission from the shul.
Yeah, but a house is not a shul. The Beis HaKnesses that has the aron, so that's its place.
Okay, so then it shouldn't have had the
meaning the
permission
rabbi-
from the shul.
No, but the rabbis of the shul can't give permission. That's
what I'm saying. I agree with you.
Now, halacha seems to be saying that they shouldn't give permission.
Correct.
Although he backed away and said that if they sell the aliyahs, maybe we don't have to be so machmir to prevent it from happening. That was what he said. But technically, its place is in the shul. A person's house, is not a shul. It's a person's house. No, Saul was asking, what if a person owns a Sefer Torah, and he loaned it to the shul, and he wants to take it back? That has to do with Choshen Mishpat Dinim, who owns it, if he gave it to the shul, does he have the right to ask for it back? He probably does, but it has to be done Kedas V'Kedin. Even then, the place of that Sefer Torah, he's giving it to the shul's usage, is the Aron HaKodesh in the shul. Eventually, the person's going to move to Israel, he wants to take a Sefer Torah. Okay, he takes a Sefer Torah. I'm sure they write a contract like that it doesn't belong to the shul.
Yeah.
Even if they prepared a place for the Sefer Torah on that day, if the Torah could be in a place 1 or 2 days, it's less zilzul. And they set aside a place for it before the time of reading. And then that means that Sefer Torah shouldn't just be put on a table somewhere. They should find a place for it and put it in there, and then take it out and take it back. It shows that it wasn't brought just for Kriya. Ela shekova di rasa bekan lois man. It had a place. It had a place where it lives for a period. It has a mokum dira. With Solomon Gadol b'Torah. When it says an Adam Choshev means a Torah scholar. The other about Torah misalis like they are noshim gedolim. The lav zilzel betzlo. When you bring a Sefer Torah to a great Adam Gadol, it's a covenant for the Sefer Torah. I am the Sefer Shemen Amor. The b'choshev afilu eino onus shari. Means if the person's not sick or in any way troubled, you could bring the Sefer Torah to the Adam Gadol. V'yesh machmirim b'choshev l'chud. Some say no, only for an important person to bring a Sefer Torah, and still tov sheyachin makom. B'chol inyan shari hainu afilu b'li hachonas makom. Adam choshev, that means if he was Adam choshev, even you don't have to prepare a place. In the Bir Allah, the Chafetz Chaim writes that discussion above concerns the case of one individual. But if 10 men are all unable to attend the synagogue, such as if they have all been placed in jail or are in isolation together, then there's room to be lenient, to bring a Sefer Torah without any special arrangements. When the Mordechai said it was prohibited, he was talking about single people who were in prison. And then they're going to gather 10 people, but there's really only one person in jail. Who seems like it's permitted for a sick person to gather 10. Like we learned last week, there's no special chiyuv on a yochid mitzvahs kriyas Torah if he can't go to shul. Val, if there are 10 people who are sequestering somewhere, kiven the chalalei chayvus kriya, they now have an obligation to read. They can't go to the Sefer Torah. Gama Mordechai moide the tzarich lavilem Sefer Torah likuspa. So to summarize, the Chafetz Chaim offers a number of important practical guidelines concerning this halacha. Some authorities disagree with the Mordechai and permit bringing a Sefer Torah to an individual in a case of onus, duress, like being in prison or sick. One may therefore be lenient for Parshas Zoch or Parshas Pom. The reason for this halacha is that it is degrading to the Torah to be brought to people for them to hear the Torah reading. One may be lenient to bring a Sefer Torah to a house meeting at Rosh Hashanah if those participating in that meeting will also pledge tzedakah, such that the total tzedakah collected will be greater than would otherwise be. One may bring a Sefer Torah out of the shul if it remains in a designated place for at least a day or two, even if it's brought shortly before the meeting begins, though not right at the time of the Kriyas Torah. That's not coveting. One may be lenient to remove a Sefer Torah from the shul on behalf of a prominent Torah scholar. One may be lenient when where a group of individuals will otherwise be unable to hear the Torah reading. The Pischei Tshuva mentions another practical application of this halacha, in addition to the cases discussed above, namely moving Sifrei Torah from one room to another in shtiblach. Shtiblach refer to small Hasidic shuls that are used in a very casual manner as both a place to daven and also to conduct other functions such as Torah and Shabbos meals and the like.
Leniency, that's a leniency that is added.
Namely, moving Sifrei Torah from one room to another in shtiblach. Let's see what he said. L'chein otam batei knesses shekayim behem shtiblach. Synagogues that have shtiblach. Tzrichim lasos hishtadlus gdoila sheyusifrei Torah v'aroines kodesh b'chol cheder v'cheder. They actually should establish an Aron HaKodesh in every room in the place. L'man lo yitztarach l'tatal Sefer Torah m'cheder l'cheder shetzarach lav or derech prosdor. They don't. It's not coveted to carry the Sefer Torah from room to room. Rather, they should establish an Aron HaKodesh in every one of those rooms, and they have Sefer Torah there.
So this actually comes up even in big shuls when you need like the Shabbos 3 Sifrei Torah, and you take it from one minyan to the other. You see that happen a lot because they don't have 3 Sifrei Torah sometimes that are kosher. You have 4 minyanim in different places, so you see people bring it Well, I mean, that happens.
We also certainly do it
Well,
on
it's
Sefer
so-
Torah.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
Yaakov,
the
you
thing.
have no choice, you have no choice. He's
Well,
saying you could
roll it.
prepare it.
You could roll it. I mean, that it's preferable to bring one through the corridor, through the hall, or you could roll it, especially the third one. So, I mean, and we tend to, I guess it's Tircha de Tzibura, we tend to bring, we do it at Shari Tzedek. It happens. So,
We bring it in too.
yeah.
We sometimes will take a Sefer Torah from the big shul into the little
Right.
base medrash that we have. So you see, it's not so poshut to do that, Bernie.
Yeah, that's
We're
what I'm
saying it's not so poshut to do that. Some poskim, such as the response of Beis Shlomo, cited in the Dirshu edition of the Mishnah Berurah, Siman 135, are lenient concerning removing a Sefer Torah where all the rooms used for Kriyas Torah are in one building, which would include most shuls or shtibla. So that takes care of Yaakov's issue, because they're all in one building. In addition to the cases mentioned where removing a Sefer Torah is permitted, poskim also enumerate other cases where the halacha is lenient. The Piskei Tshuva cites poskim who are lenient on Simchas Torah to organize breakout minyanim and other nearby locations in the shul, using the Sefer Torah from the shul so everyone can get aliyah. Right? It's often necessary to organize additional Torah readings so it doesn't inconvenience the tzibur. That we've all seen. V'rak b'simchas Torah mekilim b'zevenagim l'tatal Sefer Torah mimakom l'makom k'dei shilachol hatzibur avshos l'al Torah. We move Torahs to different places in the shul, so everyone could have an aliyah. V'achar kriya machzira Sefer Torah b'esak knesses. Then they're all brought back. V'shtadlu shasra anashim yilavus a Sefer Torah b'otzov ha'chadrasa. So here's a nice din that 10 people should accompany the Sefer Torah when we move it back and forth. So you see one guy running out with it. That's a zilzul. Chaim is probably taking notes here. That's a nice minhag to have 10 people walk with the Sefer Torah. Listen, 10 people are gonna have to be there for the minyan, right? To get an aliyah, you need 10 people.
Isn't it something where if you move a Sefer Torah to another location for a short period of time, it's supposed to be read 3 times or something?
No, that's we've been rejecting all. You see, they said you need to. Saul asked, "What about the reading it the 3 times?" So far, we haven't come across that din. That it seems to be apocryphal, meaning what you don't want to do is bring the Sefer Torah right before the Kriyas HaTorah.
Right.
You want to bring it the day before. For example, the Misaskim, they actually bring the Sefer Torah a few days before you have a minyan in your home. They dafka do it. They bring an aron. So they fulfill what you need to do. You have a place where it's put. I must tell the group, I was president of Young Israel of Hancock Park in 1991 or 90, whenever the Rodney King riots were. And as the fires were coming up La Brea, we decided that it would be safe, because Young Israel of Hancock Park had a glass door. Is the door still glass? But it used to be glass
You mean where?
at Young Israel of Hancock Park. I'm trying to remember what it's like now. Is it a wood door? Okay, but it was a glass. Okay, so it was a glass door. So Rabbi Krause told us to remove. I had 15 Sefer Torah in my living room. All this, Avery Einhorn was the gabbai. And he and I moved all the Sefer Torah to my living room. And my next door neighbor was Jack Simcha Cohn. And he sees me and Avery bringing all these Sefer Torah. Ernie, what are you doing? It was that Monday. We were all home. He says, we're worried. So he immediately arranged, and they had 30 Sefer Torah. So between our 2 houses, we had almost 50 Sefer Torah between the 2 of us. It was such a pacha to sleep down. I were upstairs. We had all these Sefer Torah downstairs. It was really moiridik. So the shotguns were brought to Rabbi Cohn's house. The same thing on Martel, because he was right next. Not on Martel, on Alta Vista. When we were living there, next Peter Faber was 1 house away. Okay. Says the Piskei Tshuva, Rak b'simchos Torah mekilim, right? V'chein mutar b'simchas Torah lotzia sefer Torah l'chotzer. On Simchas Torah, you can take it out to a courtyard or l'rechov. Hasamach l'beis haknesses v'lismoch sham b'simchasa. You could take it out to the street. Growing up at Beth Jacob, so we would take over Weatherly. They would block off Weatherly. Chartfield did the same thing on Podsera. And they brought all the Sefer Torah out on the street. And the Piskei Teshuva says you're allowed to do it. L'smoch sham b'simchasa v'rov am. When there's so many people that you need to do it outside. Okay, I'm going to stop here. For questions or other comments. So, I will send an email whether we're going to learn from Eretz. I'm going to Eretz Yisrael tomorrow, so I don't know whether we're going to. It just has to be with my schedule, what minyan I'm going to, etc. Because normally 8 p.m. is 6 a.m. in Jerusalem, in Israel. I might have to do it at 9 p.m. So I'll be in contact with email with everybody regarding next week. Or otherwise, we'll just maybe take a week off till I get back.
Very good. Have a wonderful trip.
Thank you, everybody.
Great trip, Bernie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.